Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, Dopamine swipe.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome to the 817 podcast, where we talk about trends in politics, business, and culture in the lovely city of Fort Worth. Today, Jimmy is not with us, but we have our guest in resident who always comes in the clutch, Mr. Tony Hernandez. What's up, man?
What's happening, y'all? Good to be back. What's happening, EJ?
Good. I'm excited to have you because as our focus, me and you are both in education. So with school coming around the corner, Fort Worth ISD starts school August 16th. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. I mean, just in the Star Telegram alone, there was 5 stories this week about things that are going on in education. So we're going to hold that as the big story. But what we want to start out and talk about today is just knowing that the future of Fort Worth starts today. I mean, we are rolling into decisions and investments to impact our future. City Council is coming back. The new City Council with their new mayor, August 3rd, 2021. The agenda is already set, and they are making some moves and some decisions. So what I really want to focus this short story on, the first short stories, kind of breaking down for people who might be this your first pod. If you're not a regular, is we go through a couple short stories, have a big story, and then we share our wins and losses. So the first story I want to kind of hit is with City Council coming back. The first thing that's going to be on the agenda is how do we set the city's budget, which needs to be set September 21st. So there's going to be a lot of discussions. There's going to be open opportunities for the community. And what you need to know about the budget is that the city's operating budget is about $1.8 billion a year. Now, the budget is the bulk of comes from property taxes and sales taxes, about 55% of property tax, and 23% of the budget comes from sales tax. Now, what's crazy about it is that police and fire takes up 62% of the budget. So I know we're going to talk about that, but what's your overall seeing this? We're looking at the Fort Worth report story, and we're going to have that in the description. But Tony, what is your thoughts as we get ready for a new city council and start planning for the next budget?
Yeah, man. Well, first, I think it's important that we acknowledge, it's exciting that we're finally getting to the new city council because for folks who have been listening to the podcast for a while, we've had so many interviews, we've talked to so many people. So to see that election come to fruition with the city council itself, that's exciting. Let's see what they can do. Let's get it done. In terms of the city budget, I guess part of me is just, I'm new to this. I'm learning a lot about Fort Worth and getting more interested in the local scene. And I guess I didn't know, number one, just how big the city budget was. And number two, how much of it goes to police and fire. The Fort Worth report, if you aren't looking at the article online, I highly recommend you check out that link in the description. The graphic is beautiful, and it shows just how much of this is going to certain departments. And like you said, the police and fire departments, which I understand why, people are expensive and those operations do a lot of services outside of maybe what we initially think of. But if I'm being honest, my first takeaway of this article was that is a heck of a lot of money being spent on those two departments. And I'm not saying that there might need to be cuts there, but I'm wondering if there are strategic ways to reallocate some funds to some of these other small parts of the graph, like, municipal courts, libraries, code compliance.
I think economic development is big. I mean, we talk about wanting to be a future forward city who is a frontier of the new world where more employees are going to be able to work from home, work from wherever they want. We have to start competing as a place where people want to live, and economic development is going to do that. And we're talking about economic development only gets 10%. Of what the police, a little over 10%, 29 million to 273 million.
Yeah.
And, so I mean, to me, economic development needs to get more support in our budget.
I thought of you right when I saw that number on the graph, and I thought this has got to be where EJ as an entrepreneur is going to focus, because I agree. I'm looking at that number and I'm like, wow, you have $1.8 billion. We talk about being a city of the future and a city of, pulling these knowledge-based workers, and Fort Worth, y'all means all. It's not just about fake Fort Worth out in Alliance. And when we're only spending $29 million on economic development, I think it really shows where our priorities are. But what did we see in the election? This is what people care about. It's, I want safer school. I want safer communities. I want safer streets. We got to back the blue. We got to, we support. And that worked for a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
So it's really unfortunate because I'm like, everybody screams, I want safer, 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 more, more, more. And then I look at this budget. I'm like, okay, at what point is it enough?
Yeah.
At what point do we need to look at the budget and say, hey,
I mean, we
got to go elsewhere?
We've all been on the highway and some dude got pulled over and there's like 3 cops behind him. Like, do we need 3 cop cars for one pullover? We've all been in that situation where you've seen an incident and you're like, man, it seems like we brought a little too many people to this situation. I mean, my dad was in the military, so I felt the military was the same way when I would job shadow my dad and see everyone like work. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people, but I understand employment is important. Police and fire is a big employer for our country. So I also know there's difficulties in that as well. I mean, the city is expected to grow between 10,000 and 20,000 new residents year over year, coming, looking in this timeline. So yeah, I think it's important. And what I really want everyone to know is how you can get involved. You can attend a virtual town hall meeting in the coming months. You can contact your city council members. And you could speak during budget hearings, one at 7 p.m., August 24th, September 14th at City Hall. And to speak the budget hearing, you're going to have to register by 5 p.m. the day of the hearing. So go ahead and check that out. This link will be in the bio. But what this also kind of leads to, something that we have a little bit more say on, because the budget's kind of what it is. I mean, the city has already made that decision for the most part. But I think what's really big is this upcoming 2022 proposed bond package. So every 4 years, the city council kind of introduces a bond, and this one's a $500 million bond. And I feel like I have a lot to say here because to me, this is one, these bonds are requests to make future investments in our city and in our county. The city has proposed $1.3 billion worth of projects, but they're going to have to whittle down to the $5 million worth of projects and decide. And they're going to have to decide, does the project address deficiencies? Is there an opportunity to partner with other Tarrant County options to get the funding? Does the project align with the city's approved master plan and strategic goals? And does it improve existing infrastructure, public health, and safety and economic development? Now, here's what's the kicker of this, all right? Most of the money, 64% of it will go to streets, pedestrian mobility infrastructure. Parks and recreation will get 17%, and community center facilities will get 6%. If Jimmy was here, he would talk about how there's nothing around transportation and how we don't have public tran. But we've already hit that. To me, what's crazy about this, if you scroll down to the top 10 most expensive projects,
yep,
$110 million, which basically goes to kind of road development and like area development. I put each one of these bullet points into Google Maps, and all of them are outside of the Fort Worth Loop. All of them.
Yep.
Maybe one not, because one is kind of on the fence, but the majority of these, $110 million, so over 20% of this bond will go to Fort Worth that is actually not in the circle N of 820 Fort Worth.
Yeah. I knew that this was something you were going to address when you sent me the article. I looked at all of these names and, someone who's lived here my whole life, I was like, wait, Marine Creek Boulevard, Meacham Boulevard, Keller Road. I know where these places are, and they're not anywhere near the city center. And I get that Fort Worth is sprawling and it's big, and we do have to think about those areas. But when I'm thinking about a proposed bond package, and so much of this is in not Fort Worth. Sorry, I'm calling it fake Fort Worth. Y'all know how I feel about this, but I'm just looking at this and I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous of how much of this is being spent elsewhere. Same thing with look up where item 4 on this list, Northwest Patrol Division facility. I can tell you that is really far outside of the city center. I think that these things are going to appease certain voters who are not thinking about these kinds of things. I'm really disappointed with the number of things on this list that seem to fall out of the way you describe it, the loop of the city. It's pretty infuriating. Yeah, and last week I said that Keller was horizontal to Plano. I was wrong there. It's horizontal to Richardson, which is still a suburb of Dallas. Hazlitt is horizontal to Plano. And so these areas are supporting there. And that's what's crazy about
Fort Worth is designing, our city limits are crazy, right? Like Haltom City is not, in our, when you type Fort Worth City into Google, Haltom City, Richland Hills are not in what they see as Fort Worth.
Right.
And so it's just, to me, like, what's infuriating to me and what I would say is, like, as someone who lives on the east side, who has to travel to the west side often, you know, is that it is a ghost town over here. We are in the loop, close to the city, and there is silence. You know, I live off of Oakland exit, and the difference, you know, Oakland and Hewlin are the same distance from downtown. And from Hewlin, you got obviously the Central Market, but then you got the university, you got Montgomery, you got TCU. I mean, you got the zoo, you got, you know, the Papados, like that all feels like a city. And then once you get over here, it is just road, it's just land and just nothing. And so to me, what's frustrating is how we're talking about developing. Look at this. The first one, I don't know if Jennifer put this in order by the most expensive, but Crownwell Marine Creek Boulevard, Boat Club Road, like Boat Club Road. I ain't a part of no boat club.
I don't have a boat. No.
Yeah.
that was left out of my expenses this year, the personal budget.
Yeah. So it's just like we have a very strong core, safe, quaint east side that we are completely missing because we want to fund the color of the world. I don't know. I think this is something we definitely need to get involved in. And a little ways to get involved is you can go to one of the open houses this month. Two of them, one of them's already passed, but you have one 6 p.m. Thursday, August 5th at Dunbar High School. You have August 12th, August 14th, and August 19th. Definitely, if you have comments or things, I'm also going to share that into the notes as well, this list. But definitely share your vision of where we should be. If we're going to have a bond of $500 million, where we should be funding it.
Yeah. And before we get off the bond, before we completely kick it to the curb, you know, I do want to acknowledge that I read the whole article. Stop 6 Hub Community, a lot of the intersections on like Jacksboro Highway, Camp Bowie, Bryant Irving, like other places. There's pieces of Lancaster where they're talking about like fixing the corridors closer to my neighborhood, McCartan, I-20. I do see there are still things in the bond that are very much focused on the center of the city, closer to downtown, all of that. However, to your point of when you come to the east side, when you come to certain neighborhoods in Fort Worth, you just don't hear any construction. You don't see any growth. You don't see any development. And then you look at this and you're like, wait a second. So in these overdeveloped areas, we're going to just continue pouring the dollars. And in the areas that we have historically not served, we're just going to continue to wait for it, not serve them.
Yeah.
So I too was pretty disappointed with that. But also willing to look at this objectively and say there are some other wins here. But the overarching $110 million projects for Boat Club Road, come on, Cal, we got to do better.
And to me, the problem, I mean, this is also the issue with like cops and fire, fire I'll leave out of it, but it's reactionary. It's reactionary and it's not proactive. And a lot of the things that they're investing in East Side are, I think, like, it's like Band-Aids, like, right, community centers, libraries, but they're not trying to make robust economic engines in those areas. Like the corridor thing. Lancaster, we have this disgusting, you know, I live around Lancaster. They have this disgusting, like, black barrier, and it's just like wire and rope, and it looks awful. That to like block from people from walking across the street because, you know, people just walk across the street, but it's disgusting. So it's like also what's going to be the difference. I wonder what the quality of of the investments are going to look like, you know, 4 years later in those areas. And to me, that's just like the frustrating part is how do you build the other sides of the neighborhoods as places people see it. Wow, these are diverse and safe and proud Fort Worthian communities that also we need to invest in because people want to live here.
Yeah. For those of us who it doesn't impact directly, right? No matter where you live in the city, I think it's important that we think about people in the city who aren't maybe have the privilege and the opportunity to go and speak out for things for themselves. It's like, hey, like someone else has got to step up and say something. So, and I think, kudos to you and Jimmy all the time, man. I think the 817 podcast is helping people do that.
Our third short story is about the rent relief and how Tarrant County, Fort Worth, and Arlington were tasked to distribute rental assistance money across the county. We have received $63.9 million in the first package and $45.9 million in the second package. As of June 30th, we have allocated only $4.4 million in relief to more than 800 households. More than 30,000 households owe about $96 million in back rent in Tarrant County, according to the latest U.S. Census Household Pulse Survey data. Now that we're in August and people can press renters on that back due rent, I wonder what we're going to see happen in Tarrant County. And I think this is a story to just track and see what it does locally. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, hey, this is bad just on Tarrant County. This is happening nationally. Our data on similar being able to release funds is happening nationally. What I do think what's crazy is that our city officials believe that we have done enough.
Yeah, looking at comments from Mayor Parker and then just reading the article. I mean, this sentence is something that I'm telling you, EJ, I'm reading it over and over again. Because when I'm seeing that Tarrant County, Fort Worth, and Arlington, the three localities tasked with distributing rental assistance money across the country, received $63.9 million in the first package, $45.9 million in the second package. As of June 30th, the three localities had allocated about $4.4 million in relief.
Yeah.
How do you have over $100 million worth of relief money and you've distributed 4 of them? That's a complete failure by the federal government for making it the steps that they're taking, the counties for doing what they are. And like, I know it's easy to criticize from the outside looking in, but at the end of the day, I mean, I don't get it. $100 million. We have people who are being evicted. $4.4 million has been distributed. So whoever, if you are someone with some authority and have some hands on this thing directly, we got to figure out a better system to get people the help that they need, because this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, they're talking about how the application is robust. They're talking about how it might even take 60 days to get your application due. And the challenge there is your rent's due every 30 days. So you have to hope you have a landlord who's patient enough to like help, to be like, oh yeah, I'll just wait for your application to get through. So I think, this is probably the always tough thing of government, how we don't make things quicker and faster and efficient. But I also thought what's crazy here is that Fort Worth was 4th of most eviction filings out of 31 cities that were tracked. And a lot of these apartment complexes or property managers are from out of the state. I mean, they're from California, pushing people out of their homes. So it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like. But I just really wanted us to hit it that, hey, we're here, and I wonder how those funds work. What do we do with all those funds? Do we lose them if we don't use it, or does it just something we have later to make more innovative solutions or be more thoughtful about it? I have no idea.
And hopefully something that will last a little bit more long term, right? Like, I think we're still talking about Band-Aids on bullet wounds. For those who are maybe in the position of being evicted right now, I think one of the things that is easy to forget is that this is still really a place of privilege of like, do you have the savings? Do you have a fallback? Do you have any assets that can help you get through this rough time? Do you have the skills to go and get a more competitive job? Does Fort Worth have that competitive job to offer you? Like, that isn't working in the working service industry, which is struggling right now, and as COVID picks up is starting to decline again. I think it's really disheartening that, for the folks who are having to sit down, apply, think through this, probably going to have to take several phone calls, emails, work on all these applications, are also people who are like, hey, I got to work 60 hours a week to make ends meet, and I'm not making ends meet. And you've got $96 million plus lying around somewhere, and I don't have access to it. So again, to your points of efficiency, have to find a more efficient system, and then hopefully whatever money that isn't used for this direct cause right now, we're finding longer term solutions for rental assistance in Tarrant County, Arlington, and Fort Worth.
Yeah. I mean, this is crazy. We're 15 minutes into this pod, and we actually even haven't talked about the increase in COVID cases. We're talking about a 500% increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations in Tarrant County the past 2 months. That is just crazy. And I think what's also challenging is what we're going to get into is how this is impacting schools. This could impact people who are wanting to get a job. We're weird in an interesting dynamic. We're in a place where we're having like more jobs that we've ever had available in a very long time. We're having more people quit their job. There's just this massive dynamic of what does, I think COVID has made people take a step back and think like, what are they wanting out of their lives? Mm-hmm. And then it's also pressing and employers. And the crazy thing is like government funds are, everyone's blaming government funds for this issue, but government funds are expiring. And I could see that people are hoping that September we solve these problems, but with COVID and the Delta and what we know with Governor Abbott and him recently saying that mask mandates by governments or cities are not going to happen or we're not allowing, that we're going to allow this to be a personal decision. I don't know. What are your thoughts of the fall? And I thought we would be in the green and moving past this at this point of time. And it just doesn't seem like that's happening. Yeah. A lot of really interesting points here. On a personal note, I am really upset by where we're going. And, selfishly, I'll speak from a selfish perspective of like, man, I was looking to get back out there, ready to hit a concert, ready to do all these things. But I got a new baby at home who doesn't have these vaccines, doesn't have these antibodies. And now I'm legitimately concerned about virus transmission. I'm sending teachers into schools next year where all they can do is recommend masks, but they're not going to be able to require them. They're going to have to police that. Schools aren't able to send students on virtual learning without paying for it out of their own district funds, which if you weren't thinking about that at least 12 months ago, you're out of the loop on it. I am really concerned that we've taken a really bad turn. And the point that Governor Abbott is trying to make with personal responsibility, people were not being personally responsible at the height of the pandemic when we knew so little about this. And now we're asking them to take even more responsibility when at this point we know more, but they are taking fewer steps to protect themselves personally, like, wait for it, get vaccinated. Yeah. So I am really disheartened by what we're seeing. But again, just like any issue, if it doesn't impact me directly and immediately, why should I care? You and I have talked about this, right? Like, God forbid either one of us test positive and we're strongly symptomatic. But as someone who's vaccinated, as someone who's young and healthy, I'm not necessarily worried about it for myself. And I get that. I think that the narrative about, it's a fear and it's fear mongering and we all need to mask up because it's like we're terrified of it. It's like, no, y'all, it's just personal responsibility. I'm not really concerned about myself nearly as much as I am about transmitting this to someone who who isn't vaccinated or is vaccinated, but still is susceptible to this virus. It's not okay. And so I'm really tired of hearing the BS about personal responsibility from Governor Abbott. He's a coward. He's a fake. He is not going to be up. He's not going to be able to win this next election because he has just pissed on so many Texans. I'm really tired of listening to things come out of his office, and I'm really sick of him doubling down on things that just don't make any sense with data or scientific evidence. And don't get me started on Ted Cruz's dumbass either. Here we go. I mean, it'd be interesting if Abbott doesn't win again. But I mean, I think a quick win is one. I mean, like, hopefully it doesn't. I mean, I think a quick win was like the non-endorse, Susan Wright against Jake Ellsey. Jake Ellsey won, which I think that's right. A good, like, so, maybe people are realizing like the Trump way is off. But then again, there's people who are only taking the vaccine if we call it the Trump vaccine.
Oh my gosh.
And that's happening too. So yeah, locally, looking at a NBC, Channel 5 kind of article, the 7-day rolling average of new cases in each of North Texas' 4 largest counties, has at least quadrupled in the last 4 weeks. Dallas County went up from 7-day average of 132 on July 2nd to 669 on Friday of last week. Tarrant County went from 81 to 543. Denton County from 31 to 131, and Collin County from 44 to 248. And we also are realizing how, as vaccinated people, we're getting the Delta. We're learning about stories of people who are vaccinated, hanging out with other vaccinated people, getting the Delta. And so let's move to the big story and talk about how are you seeing it? And as we do that, it'd be good to give context on like your role and responsibility in education for people to know how we're framing our knowledge and our experience around education. But how are you seeing, as August 16th, Fort Worth ISD is starting school, how are you seeing this impacting launch and how schools are talking about getting ready for the new school year?
Yeah, this is a huge issue right now. A background about me. So I was a high school teacher for a few years before switching over to the nonprofit side in education. I work for an educator preparation program. We're a residency model program. What we do is we recruit teachers from all over the country. We bring them here to DFW and we work on their training by spending a year in the residency model. Then they get into their first year of teaching. They're earning a master's degree while they're doing all of this. They're getting coached during all of this. They're taking courses on how to be a better teacher during all of this. It's a pretty extensive program. But to all of those ends, we have to think not only about the students that we're serving. I have to think about a lot of majority of our folks are anywhere between the 23, 24 age, fresh out of college. This is their first professional gig. We are having to spend a lot of time mitigating risks and talking them through like, hey, we cannot control what the districts are doing. Like there's only a level of protection that we can offer. So we have, and just to be frank here, and so much of the podcast is dedicated about bringing people to the great, area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the great city of Fort Worth. Let me tell you, we have had people quit and say, hey, I cannot come to your region because I'm worried about how y'all don't protect people from COVID. I'm not comfortable working on a campus that can't have mask mandates. I am not comfortable working in a community with vaccination rates as low as yours. That's facts. Like that's actually happening. And people who are like, well, surely this is going to turn around. Surely schools or the state or someone is going to turn around and finally say, hey, this is nonsense. Put the masks on, get vaccinated. Let's work on those social distance protocols and let's protect our teachers and our students. It's not happening. And the very real result of it is we're losing young talent to come to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And more importantly, we're losing teachers for students who need them this year more than ever because we are not doing basic things that we know are backed by science and data to protect them while they go to work. So it's really having a direct impact on my line of work, but that means it's having a direct impact on Fort Worth schools, Dallas schools, and all over the country. Teachers are having to make decisions to protect themselves when state governments need to have some bravado, stand in front of a microphone and say, we're not doing that here. It's really disheartening. And it is, like I said, very much directly impacting me on a day-to-day basis.
Now because I know a lot of the other challengers, like Fort Worth ISD is not offering a virtual, a digital program this year. So,
yeah.
And so that means if you're a parent who's frustrated with, Governor Abbott's making it hard for districts to require masks, and then now you can't feel comfortable that the mask will stay on or masks will be enforced, you may feel uncomfortable sending your kid in because kids under 12 aren't going to get a vaccine until later in the year. So what is that thinking around? Because in short, what you do is you supply teachers to districts who need more teachers. And right now that's definitely huge as class sizes are about to double.
Yeah.
And people are coming back to school,
Yeah.
and full.
And I think it's important to point out too that, so last year, go back to 2020 when the world was still kind of shut down. We saw an uptick, right? So our educator preparation program, we had more teachers sign up and commit and actually show up than we ever have. And that's because there were limited opportunities that they knew we were going to be in a completely virtual environment. There was advantages to that. We saw more teachers sign up for the profession than ever, at least in our program, right? Well, this year, you fast forward 12 months and it changes. COVID is back. Delta variant is rearing its ugly head. And what we're seeing, instead of unlike last year where we had more people sign and commit, this year we're having way more people turn in their offers. Hey, no, I can't do it. I'm not going back to on campus. I'm not comfortable with that yet. If you look at the Sunday, if you're looking at the Sunday Star Telegram, the article from Silas Allen that was on the cover, he talked about, to your point, EJ, the finances of these schools. Schools are paid based on attendance, right? So you have to have bodies in the building in order for you to make money. Well, only Round Rock and Austin, those were some of the ISDs that were mentioned in the article directly, budgeted for virtual learning this year. A lot of other districts didn't. And I know that that's probably because we were all very hopeful about the vaccine and all of those things, but also there wasn't a lot of time to make that decision. So now it's almost like we're threatening campuses with, hey, if you want to offer virtual, you do that, but you got to figure out a way to pay for it on your own. And again, that sounds really easy for legislators and lawmakers to make that decision, but who it completely ignores are families, students, teachers who virtual not only is a safer option for them, but in some cases might actually be the best option for them. I'm fully aware of COVID slide. I'm aware that a lot of students need to be in a building and they're more familiar with that learning style. And I get that. And I think that should definitely be the majority of what we're doing this year. I see it. But to not have any virtual option, not only is a mistake from a health perspective, I think it really fails to look at the future of education in America as this could be the model moving forward. And instead of we've already done it, we have a year of experience doing it, and instead of capitalizing on that and offering it to a modest number, 10%, 15% of your students in the district, instead of offering it to that many, we're just saying, nope, it's offline. That is an incredible miss all over the country. I'm not pointing fingers at Fort Worth ISD. It's really above them at this point. But to not have any sort of virtual option, again, from a safety, comfort, and to better serve the communities that you are in, what a giant miss. And we're losing teachers. We're losing talent in the DFW Metroplex because of stupid mandates from Governor Abbott.
By the end of last year, about 48% of students in the district were still in remote learning. And I think there's, like you said, the steepest learning loss was in math, with about 16% more students failing in 2021 than in 2019. Fort Worth pre-K programs were down 38% in 2020-21 compared to 2019-2020. So a lot of ramifications that happen from COVID and people being stuck at home. I wanted to actually hit the school district is getting more than $260 million over 3 years through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, a federal program intended to address the impact COVID-19 has had on our nation and giving this directly to school districts locally. This is one of the largest blocks of funding in the district Fort Worth has ever seen. And it's probably going to be like the most we've ever seen in our lifetime. It's once in a generation investment into the future of our schools and of our kids. So it's crazy to me, the fact that we shut down the innovation of virtual, when this is our lifetime to double down on what a future school should look like, is frustrating. But I also want to kind of go to a lot of the funds they say is to add more teachers, give more resources to teachers, and use this funds to help teachers. What do you know about how school districts are spending this additional funds? Maybe you don't have any experience directly in Fort Worth ISD, but a lot of the relief funds here is about hiring more teachers. Staff is a priority, getting full-time positions and reducing class sizes. What is kind of your take on what you know about how people are spending their relief funds?
Yeah. So one of the things, and especially thinking about talent pipelines, is, what have we talked about for years in this country? Teachers are historically underpaid and undervalued, right? This is an opportunity in one way to right that wrong. Is we can now incentivize districts to hire, not just hire teachers and just find people, who are, ready to start and like, oh, I need a job, I guess I'll go do this. No, we're talking about investing in teachers who come from quality vetted programs. So TEA actually has a list of vetted residency programs, for example, where it's an incentive of like, hey, here are 15 or 16 programs that meet all of these standards, right? Their admissions criteria is X. They train teachers longer. They offer mentoring. They stick with districts for 3 years. They have a lot of parameters that they have to meet. What those funds are allowing them to do is saying, hey, we are encouraging you to go invest in a program that historically has probably been more expensive than your district wanted to pay for, but the training and the outcomes are better. So that is one way that, I'm seeing that in the organization that I am with, and we're going to see that in Fort Worth ISD. In addition, though, and I don't know about this as much, I wonder if there are opportunities to use this for like teacher excellence initiatives. So I know that's coming to Fort Worth ISD. Dallas is already using it. I don't know that they will be able to use funds like that for something, funds from the federal government for something like that. But at the end of the day, you got to reward talent. You got to reward people for staying in the room. And unfortunately, this year, you got to reward them for putting their lives on the line with the Delta variant potentially being, run through schools. So yeah, that is one way that I know that funds are being used, is to attract more talent more effectively and take some of the pressure off of districts to pay for programs that historically they might have been like, well, that's a nice to have, not a need to have. Well, now you can have it. You have tons of money to invest in it. So go get that top tier talent.
Just hearing you kind of jam too, it's funny how like Baylor Scott and White mandates vaccines. Like health professionals and health institutions are mandating vaccines, but we can't mandate masks for our school district. Like that seems very like we should be able to do that. And Governor Abbott has to press down. Like I know his whole thing is he doesn't want to be seen as someone who's telling people to do it because that's going to impact his votes or whatever. But he could at least say, hey, I'm going to allow local districts and communities decide what's best.
I really, again, I'm right there with you, man. I really think that was the big miss here where, listen, Texas is giant. It is a huge state. And what is right for one county may not be right for another one, right? Like, heck, you and I have been on multiple road trips out to Big Bend and Canyon and all these places.
Oh, we need to go back.
Man, sign me up. But we know one of those counties is very different than Tarrant, like, or Dallas County or Harris County or Behar County. So I think I understand his hesitation and his party line rule of like, we need to take a step back and I'm not going to mandate it to everybody, but to take that ability away from county officials who are closer to the work, that is like a superintendent making a decision for what should be taught without having taught for years and then telling teachers what should be going on in their classrooms. It doesn't work that way. The people closest to the work should be the people responsible for making the decision. So from that analogy of education, I really see a big miss on Governor Abbott here. And again, I just keep coming back to the point of like on a daily basis, I legitimately am hearing from teachers, faculty, and staff who are saying, hey, I'm worried about this. What are we going to do about this? What can we do? And all I can say is, just like the governor said, you have to practice personal responsibility. Mask up. And if you're genuinely concerned that you're going, mask up, get vaccinated. And if you're genuinely concerned that this is not going to be a safe work environment for you, unfortunately, you may need to do something else for a year. And that pains me to say because these are people who really want to be there, really want to do right by kids, but they also need to protect themselves.
Yeah. Well, kind of these funds are for one-time use and end after 3 years. If the kind of kicker here, what's interesting though, you talk about paying up the teachers. The problem is like this funds are only 3 years available. And districts would need to enroll, the district would need to enroll 9,000 to 12,000 additional students to maintain the hundreds of teachers and staff hired by the funds. How do you see people looking at, I mean, granted, we just talked about earlier in the pod how we're looking at 10 to 20,000 people coming to Fort Worth. So the opportunity of enrollment increases there. What is kind of your take on the long-term sustainability of investing in teachers?
Yeah. So again, I'll talk specifically about like teacher pipelines, right? So like a program like mine, which does cost a little bit more because it is a longer training program. It's a little bit more all inclusive, I guess you could say. There's a cost associated with investing in that top talent and those longer recruitment programs. What the money is designed to do, and it lasts for 3 years, is they're essentially saying like, hey, we'll get you started, but we're pointing the finger at you districts to find a way to make this financially sustainable ongoing. And if one of those things is going to be enrollment, then districts got to get creative on how they're going to get enrollment. But also I think it's up to state legislatures and for TEA to start thinking about, well, how do we increase enrollment with virtual options, hybrid options, those STEM academies that we're seeing? Like, how do we get creative about pulling people back into the school district and getting them excited to be a part of Fort Worth ISD? So part of it is that. And then, the other part goes back to things that we talked about way earlier, economic development. If you have a strong economy, if you have a city that people want to live in, if we're bringing kids in here and they see Fort Worth ISD as an innovative, results-driven district that can get things done for students and offer parents and families their best opportunity to get a quality education, this thing is going to take care of itself. If we continue to do the things that we've always done, brick and mortar is the only way, draw from the same pipelines of teachers, offer the same kinds of programs, and we don't innovate and change based on what we learned in 2019, 2020, and this year, then we'll just always get the same results. And for some districts, that's going to be just fine. But just like so many other things in education, they're going to become extinct. They're going to see enrollment drop, and they're going to have a really hard time keeping up with pods, homeschooling, charter networks, all of these other things that are competing with public schools. So I don't want that to happen. I think Fort Worth ISD has a really good opportunity here to get innovative. One miss this year, I think, from them and TEA was not allowing that virtual hybrid option. One win I could see for them is investing in top tier talent, bringing people in from across the country who want to live and work here and stay here for a long time because of incentives like what's being offered right now. Yeah.
Well, August 16th, school is back, and really hoping that kids can have a normal experience and that we can hone Delta in and help our teachers and remain helpful. Tony, thank you for your insight, expertise in that area. I know you're doing a lot of work, pitting a lot of teachers in schools across DFW. Let's go ahead and move to wins and losses. You want to start with your loss?
Not to beat a dead horse, but the loss here is COVID. There's not much else to say here. The loss is Delta variant. The loss is how we're handling it in Texas and Tarrant County. Mask up, get vaccinated. Folks who listen to this podcast, I'm sure are doing those things, but take care of yourselves. COVID is a big L for me right now.
Absolutely, man. We've been there, done that, bought that t-shirt. This is probably that, the pod who does it right. If you're still on the pod, much love, and, really looking forward to continue to get great feedback from you guys always. My L is that, the oversight committee and how officials disagree on the police oversight board. So a little context, and a task force was inspired by an incident that happened to a family when they called in because their son got assaulted in their neighborhood, and the daughters were arrested. The two teenagers were arrested in the area, and so this kind of formed our race culture task force and in Fort Worth. And it's been a thing that's been going on since 2018. And we've been recommending an oversight committee and we even hired someone who to play as the first police monitor. Her name is Kim Neal. But city council are now going to start having conversations around should we have an oversight community task force, and are they able to subpoena and indict officers for bad behavior? And so I think obviously where I think the loss is here is just one, how crazy the POA is. Basically officers who are backed by that are saying, no, we shouldn't, they don't want this. 80% of police officers are saying this won't make a difference. Chief Noakes saying, hey, this won't make a difference, but I'll abide by it. And I just think the loss here is just, to me, it's how a lot of like criminal justice and equity and understanding it, it's just, I feel like so much vanity and no one actually wants to do it. But there's also, to me, what's annoying about it is just how much power the police force has. I mean, we talked about earlier how much money they get, but then also it's just like, imagine the teacher association being able to publicly fund and back people and to be able to do that so publicly and so powerfully without any consequences. Like the POA sends out flyers of who they endorse. Like, I just feel like as a city institution, you should have to stay neutral on these things. And what you're seeing is that all this work that we've put in to the task force is being challenged. And I don't know where the city council is going to lie. Obviously, Carrie Moon is against kind of the subpoena piece. Chris Nettles is for it. It's going to be interesting to see where our party lies, because a lot of them got POA money. Where is Flores and Givens going to participate? So my loss is just like how we try to do stuff to improve situations, but then somehow not only does most of our budget goes to police, they also are able to endorse back and press on people to make decisions where they don't want the accountability from the people, even though the people want it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Reading that article, I think it is kind of disheartening that it felt a little dejected, right? Like it felt just kind of like, oh, we're going to give this the old college try, but none of us believe that this is actually going to work. I'm like, Chief, like let's at least pretend to be like, hey, we're gonna give it. We're gonna try hard on this. We're excited about it. We want the community to feel like they're heard and listened to. But then I saw, in the numbers in there about how many people responded to some of these surveys, and it is disheartening. To put a point on what you're saying, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of authority. It seems like this is something that would overall be good. But like you said, there's a lot of money at stake for a lot of different people. So I think we know where this is heading.
Yeah.
That reading that article, I was like, oh, okay. So I was an English teacher. I know what foreshadowing is. It sounds like this is going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, let's go to our wins. I know we have some good wins. What's your win?
Man, shout out to the boy Leon Bridges, because my win is going to be, I got my Gold Digger Sound album, and just love the music, man. Love what he's doing for Fort Worth. I know that's not about news or anything else like that, but I feel like it's about Fort Worth culture.
Absolutely.
He had a huge write-up in, I think it was Texas Monthly Magazine.
It was awesome.
Which was really good. Highly recommend y'all check that out. He's got a great story, but another great album. Really enjoying it. Good job, Leon Bridges. Fort Worth's own.
Yeah, that's, a great track number 3. It's just, album number 3, you just keep coming out with unique, different spins on your talent. Super dope. Definitely, definitely pumped for the King of Fort Worth, Mr. Leon Bridges. Now, my win is the idea that the Fort Worth Street White Settlement Road could have a new name, and that Maddie Parker and other city council people are interested in how we can change the White Settlement Road bridge into downtown. How can we change that name? And what should we change it to? Is something that's happening.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting how that looks, but I just think that's a win that we're finally having legit conversations about changing the name.
It is an absolute win. I was actually smiling, holding, I was doing a feeding at that time with my newborn. So it's like 3 a.m. and I'm reading this article and I was like, yes, this is excellent. I had a huge smile on my face. It's time for this. Good job, Maddie Parker. I feel like this is kind of, I'm not going to say it's out of character, but it's like, she's been doing, I feel like a lot of things, like she's definitely putting in the effort. I think she's definitely putting in the effort to be a mayor of everyone. That's right. Even though we looked at that election map, we know where the majority of her votes came for. Man, big shout out here. I think this is something that it's like, I think she knows this is going to piss off some people, because we know how much people love statues of losers and relics of not even history, but just like worst parts of our history. To be like,
what's the other road we got to talk about too?
Oh my gosh, your favorite Confederate Parkway, which takes you to the Fort Worth Nature Preserve. Yeah. So I hope this is the start of many of those conversations. Good job, Maddie Parker. Let's make it happen. Don't let this just be a dream that dies. Let's make it happen and change White Settlement Road in Fort Worth to something awesome. And let's celebrate another part of this city's great and storied history.
Boom.
Panther Parkway. I'm just saying.
Does that exist yet?
I don't think it does, and that's low hanging fruit.
Well, hey guys, I know what's weird about this. We gave a ton at you this week. I think about last week, we basically only talked about a soccer complex. Today, we hit a ton, and I know you could feel overwhelmed, maybe even all over the place. I mean, we hit the budget, we hit the 2022 bond, we talked about city council getting started, we talked about COVID cases, we talked about evictions, we even talked about schools and what we can expect school to look like. I know it's been a ton, but if you're here to the end, and if you're a member of the 817 fam, we appreciate you. And we look forward to continue to deliver weekly news to you based off of the information that's going around and the knowledge that we're receiving from Star Telegram, the Fort Worth Report, Fort Worth Magazine, Fort Worth Business Press. We consume it all. And our goal is we spend 10 hours a week reading the news, finding the stories, and then curating a 45-minute show for you so that you can get that knowledge easily on your car ride, walking your dog, doing the laundry. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, tell a friend, tell them to subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment. And we genuinely enjoy doing this as we're this month. August 30th will be a year of the 817 podcast.
Yeah. Congratulations, man. It's been I've really enjoyed listening. I appreciate when Jimmy allows me to fill in for him. To all of EJ's points, when Jimmy's here, this thing is as smooth as butter. EJ and Jimmy have a great rapport. They have great information. I appreciate being a guest, but if this did feel all over the place, my apologies. I know some of that can be on a guest podcaster, but 1 year of the 817 podcast, it's influenced my life. It's changed the way that I think about the city of Fort Worth and being involved in local politics. I've gotten to meet some great people next to EJ that I wouldn't have otherwise engaged with. So if you're new here, stick around. And if you've been a repeat listener, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. EJ, appreciate you and Jimmy doing this. 817, man.
We out.